I think it was a necessary move by the Big Ten, Molly, because they just could not defend their decision on August 11th to shut down while almost everyone else, minus the Pac-12, was playing football. And I think when you saw the NFL start this weekend and move on fairly successfully, they came to the conclusion they had to do something. I mean, they have very tough guidelines. If a player it tests positive, he could possibly be out for 3 weeks. So those are certainly the most stringent we have seen. But ultimately, there was such a backlash. Remember, Nebraska went to legal court. They used legal means to try to get this thing into court. Ryan Day, the head coach at Ohio State, was very vocal in his criticism. So was James Franklin. So was Jim Harbaugh. And I think at the end, they were in an indefensible position. They were losing players. Their reputation was taking an absolute beating. So they came to the conclusion, they claim unanimously, that they are now back.
Well, was it one of those situations, Paul, where because of the Big Ten's decision, we heard all of this noise and all of this criticism coming from the likes of Harbaugh and Day and Franklin and others? Or had they expressed themselves beforehand and was just summarily ignored, whether it be by the chancellors, the presidents, or the ADs themselves? Which one was it?
I think they were ignored, Stephen A. And it's worth remembering some of the leaders of the Big Ten, two presidents in particular. Those at Michigan and Michigan State are both infectious disease specialists. One's an ID doctor, the other is an immunologist. And I think these people came to the table and they said, you know, we understand this science. I don't really care what any of these college football coaches are saying. And I don't argue with that. I think we all agree. We're talking about a global pandemic here. The problem that many, if not all, of those who spoke out had is, why did they have to make the decision on August 11th? Everyone else put off. The SEC has still not played a football game. That will come a week from Saturday. So everyone wanted to see what the situation was, see what the mitigation on college campuses turned out to be. Not great, but survivable. And most importantly, they wanted to see if the NFL could pull it off. And I think after having seen all that, they made this choice. And I really think the other point is that they said today in their press conference that the rapid testing, the antigen tests, have really helped them get over the top. I mean, they are going to be very strict about this, and they should be. I mean, you have plenty of people chirping out there around the college football world that, so what? Everybody on the team has it. I hope they don't get it again. That's not what you're hearing from the Big Ten, but still, they will take a little bit of heat from some, and they are, for flipping the decision. But I think most Big Ten fans and most people at the Big Ten schools are pretty pleased with the announcement.
That's what I was wondering about, Paul, because Orgeron comes out and says, hey, most of the team has gotten COVID. And so the hope is, it's kind of like that very bad idea on a national scale, herd immunity, right? The hope is, even if the antibodies last only 3 months, that's enough time. They're not going to get it again. We can actually field our players. They're not wrong. You know, the risk, of course, is long-term health and spreading the disease and things like that, but they're not wrong about that. But what I'm wondering is what you just touched upon. How much of this Big Ten decision do you think is, for lack of a better word, peer pressure? Like when everyone else who's doing what you're doing is doing something else, it seems like it's okay. Science be damned. And how much of it is, in fact, because we forget already, even a month or two ago, testing was not as widely available. Even if it's just an antigen test, it wasn't as easy or cheap to get tests. So how much of it is the changing kind of access to the science, and how much of it do you think is just peer pressure? They're reversing course.
Well, Max, I think it is more peer pressure than anything, but the science gave the president something to hang their hat on today. I mean, I heard the word student athlete 50 times, the health of the student athlete. I mean, we're all somewhat sick of hearing that, because I think it's safe to say that we're having sports right now because they are money makers, and in the Big Ten's case, they just really could not handle the heat. And I also wonder, you know, the President of the United States got involved 2 weeks ago. Some people thought that was a negative. It turns out that, you know, he's on Twitter today talking about it and taking some credit. I don't have any earthly idea whether he pushed them over the top. but it probably didn't hurt by calling more attention to it, by calling and putting more pressure on the situation. So in the end, I think they got it right. If it shuts down in a couple of weeks, then we'll all be right back here questioning their decision. But they just weren't prepared for the backlash, and they weren't prepared, Max and Stephen A. and Molly, because they just didn't need to make that decision. They made a foolish decision on August 11th. Had they made it a week ago, I think we could have said, okay, they took their time, but they didn't take their time. So they undid it, and they opened themselves up. But I don't think they're going to be too concerned about that right now.
Well, assuming that the season does not get canceled and they move full steam ahead, how legitimate is a college football playoff going to be? How legitimate should it be to all of us, since everyone won't be playing? I mean, you have the Big Fives, but you have a multitude of colleges that won't be playing, and we know that they're usually not a part of the college football playoff. We get all of that. But in light of the fact that so many people have elected to stay home and not have a season, how legitimate is this college football season in your eyes?
Stephen A., it's a lot more legitimate today than it was yesterday. And I say that because the Big Ten is a factor. In Ohio State, they have one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. The Pac-12 in this doesn't really matter. Other smaller leagues don't factor in. But now you have 4 of the Big 5. I don't think you need to talk about asterisks anymore. Yeah, I get it. One may be playing 8 games, one may be playing 10, 11, 12. But look up and down the sports world right now. In the NBA, that wasn't a complete season, although it was certainly more than baseball is going to be. And I think you just have to take what you can get in 2020. I mean, asterisk is a word that will be overused. But if they can get to December 19th is when they play their championship game, and the 20th is when the selection of the college football playoff comes out, then I think it will have been a success.